we start this public hearing, we're just going to go over a couple of ground rules. During the public hearing, please refrain from talking out of turn. The hearing is being recorded. In order to produce a clear, clean record, you can only have one person talking at a time. Also, if you're talking, it makes it harder for those around you to hear. If you would like to speak, please fill out a request. I believe they're back here. As of right now, we only have 2 requests. If you're here as part of a group, please, instead of just when you're standing up and saying the same thing, please appoint one person to speak on behalf of the group. If someone has already said what you're planning on saying, please feel free to simply state your position if you agree with what is said from the previous speakers. We also have a timer set up, which Dana will be running over here. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. With that being said, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing, and we'll start with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good evening. My name is Matthew Williams. I'm the City Manager for the City of Litchfield Park. I'm also the Zoning Administrator. You have our Planning Manager beside me, Mr. Daniel Loftus, and our AC and our Assistant City Manager, Paige Peterson, is here beside me. I would also like to welcome our reps we have here with us tonight from IDM and JDM. So as far as tonight's order of events goes, staff will be making our presentation first. IDM will be making their presentation after ours, and then we'll be open the floor to staff comments. I would also like to welcome the council members we have here with us tonight. Thank you for being here. You will see our presentation tonight. Of course, this is in the staff packet. As we go through this, there's a lot of information in this corner. There's a lot of history here. For those of you that have been in Litchfield Park a long time, you may remember the history of this parcel discussions in the past. And we would ask, of course, that tonight's meeting be civil. We certainly think it will. But this is a public hearing. It's time for discussions, as the Vice Chair said, and we look forward to those discussions. Again, the first order on the agenda tonight is the public hearing, and I need to be requested a GPA. A GPA is a general plan amendment and also a rezoning amendment. What we're going to do tonight, we actually have 2 hearings tonight, and we have the rezone and the GPA. But rather than go through the whole case multiple times, we're going to go through the case once and refer back to our presentations as we go along. Just to be clear, I'm going to use a lot of acronyms tonight. IDM, JDM. JDM, of course, I think anyone that's lived in Litchfield Park very long knows what JDM is. JDM is the company that owns the Wigwam, the Biltmore, among other businesses. They've been a long-time partner here in the city and they work well with the city. IDM is the developer that's looking to develop this property. We also have a law firm here tonight, Gamage and Burnham, and they represent IDM. IDM and JDM have made the following request on the 15-acre property. Again, the property in question is at the corner of Wigwam and Litchfield. I think we all know where this is. It's right across from City Center. It's that corner that's been available for a long time, just south of Cache and east of Renaissance. The first request is A, to make a general plan amendment to reduce the required 75,000 square feet of commercial property to 14,100 commercial square feet. Obviously, that's a big change. We'll get more to that as we go along. That's a requirement from Resolution 373 from 2014. Again, we'll get more to that. Also, B is to modify from neighborhood commercial NC to high-density multifamily zoning on the 12.68 gross acres and community commercial on the 2.20 gross acres. The city has a long history of annexing commercial properties with residential properties. There's a reason for that. Litchfield Park is very unique in the way that we operate. And as you know, we have no property taxes conservatively, and we have to depend highly on sales tax revenue. Because of that also, these sales tax, those commercial properties are needed to pay for the cost of residential properties, including streets, police, and fire. These are all things that normally residents pay with property taxes. But rather in this city, because there isn't a property tax, when you shop at local stores, you use local restaurants, those revenues are what pay for these services. A good example of that would be the Albertsons and Monument Point centers. Those were bought into the city when the property known as the Villages of Litchfield Park was brought into the city. And that was part of the exchange, was that if we were going to allow this many residential homes to be built that will pay no property taxes to the city, there has to be some commercial development that's going to pay for the cost of these. Thus, the city brought in Albertsons. Thus, the city brought in what is Monument Point. For those of you who may not know what Monument Point is, we're talking about the development where the large storage facility there is now at El Mirage in Camelback, Burger King in that area that is developing. Another good example of that would be Fry's. I'll talk more about that later. When the residential property that we know today as Sun Health at the corner of Camelback and Litchfield was developed, there had to be commercial across the street to pay for that residential. But there's more for that example coming up. Again, the commercial requirement on this parcel of 75,000 square feet was a compromise to help pay for the cost of cachet. Again, there's a lot of history on this parcel. If you look in the packet, we include documents. There's documents on this parcel all the way back to 1990, when the city was only 3 years old. Again, there's been a lot of history here, a lot of discussions over the years. But in 2014, there was a three-part deal that was made. The first part, the city agreed that a portion of cachet would be built on the 5 acres that was zoned commercial and on a portion of the Wigwam Road course. Again, the property where cachet is today was zoned commercial before. Eventually, that property would have brought in commercial revenue to the city. But in the city trying to work with other people, we allowed that property to be converted to residential. However, there was the balance that the property just south of it that we were talking about, again, would have 75,000 square feet of commercial. That was part of the deal. They went hand in hand. Second, the city approved JDM to build condos on the Wigwam Blue Course, provided that 13 conditions were met. In addition, the Wigwam had to remain a par 70 championship course. Please note, no action has ever been taken by JDM on this option. However, they could, if the 13 conditions were ever met. Again, these are all conditions that were made in 2014. C, the zoning on the 15 acres at the intersection of Wigwam and Litchfield was changed from neighborhood commercial to mixed use, and would include a minimum of 75,000 square feet of commercial development. I don't want to assume that everyone knows what mixed use is. Litchfield Square is a great example of what mixed use is. Mixed use usually has retail on the first floor, offices on the second, some residential on the third. That's a very common concept now, is mixed use. City staff feels that mixed use would work very well on this parcel. We can talk more about that. Again, I don't want to assume that anyone knows what mixed use is. And then it would include a minimum of 75,000 square feet of commercial development. In addition, any residential property built on Village Parkway would be substantially similar to cachet. It had to look like cachet so it didn't clash with it. Lastly, the commercial would be built before or at the same time as any residential development on this parcel. The language on all three of these were agreed upon by the city and by JDM. To me, that's a key part of understanding history here, is those three conditions. Again, it should be remembered this property was required to have 75,000 square feet of commercial to help pay for the increased public safety costs of cachet and the loss of the commercial property where cachet is today. Because when we allowed cachet to get built there, that did two things. One, residential was built, but also the city lost any future commercial revenue off that property. Not only has the commercial property that we're discussing tonight never been developed, but now the developer requests to reduce the commercial component requirement of 75,000 by 82%. It has been requested to reduce that again from 75,000 to 14,100. That's the 80% reduction. Public safety costs. I spoke on this earlier about understanding how the city works financially. Part of my job as city manager is to make sure that the city is financially sound. We have a great council. The city is very financially conservative, but we're that way for a reason. You keep money by not spending money, of course. And you have to understand how the city operates. Our finance department Paige sitting beside me is also our finance director. She'll be glad to speak with anyone that has more questions on how city finances work after the meeting. But to give you some examples of the cost. Police services cost us jail detention $1,500, animal control $1,500, for a total of $2.2 million. When you divide that $2.2 million by the city population of 6847, by the way, that is the 2020 census number if anyone's wondering, 6847. That gives you a public safety cost per resident of $323 per person. Again, that all has to come from commercial sales tax. The proposed residential development would add an estimated total of 416 bedrooms or 438 new residents. You may wonder where we got the 438 from the 416. There's formulas that are used for those calculations. These 438 residents would reflect a 6% increase in city population growth. Also, at current public safety costs, 438 residents equates to an additional $141,636 in public safety costs annually. Pretty simple. More residents equals more public safety costs, more street maintenance costs, etc. You will hear some people say about Litchfield Park that Litchfield Park doesn't want more housing. No. It's not that we want more housing, it's that we have to pay for it. Show us how we're going to pay for it. Really that simple. City revenues. If this development happened, granted the city would make some money off this. One way would be real tax. When you rent a property, an apartment, a house, you pay a rental tax. That being said, we're expecting a very fiscal, conservative legislature bill, and the city's expecting to lose rental tax next year. We expect to keep it for commercial, but we'll probably lose it for residential. We expect that to go away, so you lose that component. Granted, there would be some increased sales tax. Obviously, if you're bringing in 438 new residents, they shop, they spend money, they dine. So there would be more money from that. Also, again, there is no current revenue. Today it's fair life. Today it's making $0. We're all aware of that. IDM will make the case tonight that this property would generate over $500,000 annually in city revenues. That's certainly okay. City staff does not agree with that number, and that's not personal to IDM. It's just that we know what our current business is producing in the city now. So when we say we disagree with that number, that is fine. A few arguments. It's been said there is ample commercial space left in Litchfield Park. The only other developable corner in Litchfield Park is at Camelback and Litchfield Road. That's the property across from Fry's. Those of you that have been here a long time will remember that land was part of the Denny Family Trust and is restricted to agritourism. It's very limited in what you can and cannot build on that corner. Also, site is not preferred for a large anchor and mixed-use development. I will say I understand the notion of not wanting to put a large anchor here. When we say a large anchor, of course a large anchor is a Fry's or a Walmart. I would tell you it wouldn't fit anyway. I would tell you, though, that something like a gourmet grocer, such as an AJ's, a Whole Foods, would be an ideal location for that. Also, it's been said before that there's no mixed-use property on this parcel. Just from where I sit, that's hard to swallow. We're building Litchfield Square just across the street, and we've had a ton of interest in mixed-use development on our property. Literally across the street from this parcel. Also, those of you that have been here for years may remember, it was said for years that the property at the corner of Camelback and Litchfield Road was not developable for large retail. It wouldn't work. I saw my mayor come in, the mayor's here, vice mayor's here, some other council members. They were here for these arguments. Again, it was said for years that large retail would never work on that corner. Now, of course, we have the Fry's on that corner, and that is the busiest Fry's in the state of Arizona. It works. Traffic counts. I'm not going to get too deep into traffic counts. To me, honestly, I think the argument on this property is mainly on history. But touch briefly on this. Reducing the commercial from the required 75,000 square feet by 82% would of course greatly reduce the traffic, because residential produces less traffic than commercial does, not a question. However, of course, any development is going to make a lot more traffic than it does today. The 2018 proposal versus the 2022 proposal. Some of you may have been here and may remember these numbers from before. The 22 proposal calls for 0 studios, 92 one-bedrooms, 36 two-bedrooms, 84 three-bedrooms, for a total of 212 units, or 416 bedrooms. Again, that does include apartments and townhomes together. The 2018 proposal called for 18 studios, 131 bedrooms, 147 two-bedrooms, 18 three-bedrooms, for a total of 313, or 478. They look a lot different, but when you break down the differences, it's really not that different. The 2018 proposal had a total of 478 bedrooms. The 2022 has 416 bedrooms. That's only a 12% reduction from the 2018 proposal. Another point you may hear discussed is apartment availability. We all know housing is hard to come by, right? We know that. Housing prices are up. I'll be the first one to tell you, I bought a house myself in Litchfield Park in March. I can talk to you about that. There are apartments available. Our staff did the research on this. Within 2 miles of the address of this property, there is 1,081 apartments. Within 3 miles, there's 3,593 apartments. Within 5 miles, there's 7,214 apartments. So within 5 miles, there's 11,888 apartments within 5 miles. There's a lot of apartments close by. All the residential property here is for real property. That includes the townhomes. None of these are for sale units. They're all for rental properties. This property is surrounded by for sale units such as Cache and Renaissance Villas, with for sale homes to the south. Also, this property is deemed a luxury apartment with multiple floors. However, there are no elevators in this design. Also, of course, there can be no ADA rooms upstairs when there are no elevators. Citizen input. Many of you may have been at the meeting a few months ago that I was at that I did graciously hosted. We warmly appreciate hosting the event there at our request. To date, staff has received 33 letters from residents voicing their opinion. 32 have spoken out against the proposal. 1 has spoken in support of it. At the meeting I was just speaking of the big one, over 200 citizens attended. 10 residents spoke against the proposal, while none spoke in support of it. At the time the agenda was published, 27 letters have been received. So you see the difference between 27 and 33. So as you see, based off the citizen letters we've received so far, our citizens are overwhelmingly against this project. Again, based off what we've received so far. Current zoning. The proposal, if approved, would change the property from NC, which is known as neighborhood commercial, to high-density multifamily. Under the current zoning, the current developers could easily build mixed use with retail on the first floor and condos on the second floor, or even a third floor if needed. We think mixed use goes hand in hand. We're building mixed use across the street. Also, perhaps if a proposal was brought with something similar to Cache, along with the 75,000 commercial component, or even reasonable compromise, that could be considered. For those of you that know me, I'm pretty straightforward. We have been meeting with IDM for the last 6 months, and I've told them on multiple occasions that I feel this project is a non-starter. My opinion hasn't changed, I still do. It's too much of a reduction. I do think there's a compromise to be made. As I've said multiple times, bring me a compromise for 50,000. But going from 75,000 to 14 is just too big of a change. Just Matthew's opinion. Again, they've been told this on multiple occasions. We feel this property has large potential for mixed-use development with first floor retail and second floor condos or third floor condos, again, if needed. And as I said, we think it's too big of a change. Again, we think going from 75 to 14,000 is a non-starter. History of the property again. JDM benefited from the first condition in building cash shed. The second condition, to build a portion of the wigwam, while it's never been done, could still be done. That also benefits JDM. Now seeking to change this third condition that both parties agreed to approximately 8 years ago. I think that's a key point in this conversation. We feel that everything that was agreed to should be stuck to. You will see in my packet when it comes to council, of course, it's with P&Z tonight, that city staff respectfully recommends to the P&Z commission members and city council members that the proposal for the GPA amendment and the rezoning from neighborhood commercial to high-density multifamily be denied. Staff also recommends that the requirement for 75,000 commercial space on this property remain in place as agreed upon in 2014. Some other meetings to be aware of. The next P&Z meeting will be December the 12th at 7 p.m. at Sowers Hall. P&Z may choose to vote on this issue tonight, they may not. They may choose to wait till December. So we may not do that meeting or not, we'll see. City Council will hear this issue on Thursday, December 22nd at St. Peter's in this very room. You may wonder why we're doing that 3 days before Christmas. That's not to be inconvenient. It's that by statute it has to be introduced by the end of the calendar year. And as you may know, the city doesn't have large meeting space. So we have to meet in rooms that are available. Thus, we're here on a Thursday night. This room is used on Tuesdays and Wednesdays by church groups as it should be. So that's why it's so close to Christmas. I fully expect that item to come back to council again on January 19th at 6, again in this room. One thing for the group to be aware of is that no matter what P&Z decides, P&Z makes recommendations to council. They don't make the final decision. So if P&Z decides yes, or if P&Z decides no, either way it still comes to council for consideration. I thank you for your time and your attention. That is my presentation. And at this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to Susan Denton with James Burn Idea. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. I'm Susan Devitt with Gamage and Burnham here on behalf of both JDM and IDM. JDM is the owner of the property at Litchfield and Woodlawn Boulevard, and IDM is proposed developer of the residential or the multifamily portion. JDM would develop the commercial portion of the site. I would go through a few introductions and some introductory comments before I get into some discussion about our proposal. Here with me tonight, in case there are questions, Ted Raven from Canadian Partners is here, Christian Orr and Tony Allred from IDM. Are here with me Danny Court from Elliott Deep Pollock Company. And you're going to hear from Danny after I speak tonight. He's going to talk a little bit about the economic and market analysis that we had commissioned for this property. And Michelle Santoro from my office, who has been sort of the public face of this, interacting with any commission hearing like this with the staff recommendation of denial and seemingly this sort of chasm of disconnect between what we're proposing and what staff would like to see. It's certainly not ideal. We've had a lot of community interest so far. We had a very well attended community meeting a couple months ago. With a lot of good feedback from the community. I will disagree politely with the fact that no one has spoken in support. We do have a number of emails and letters in support of this project. There were folks that spoke at that meeting that certainly like aspects of this project. And I think, our sense at least is that the lion's share of the concerns have been focused on the rental aspect of the multifamily community that's proposed, and that it's not for sale, and that it's not necessarily related to the reduction in commercial. But that being really hoping to accomplish is to have a good and valuable and, hopefully robust dialogue tonight. I'd like to hear from whatever community member wants to speak, but we're really looking for feedback from the planning commission members as well. We don't necessarily want or expect that you would vote on this tonight. I would actually like the opportunity for this to be treated a little bit more like a work session so that we can talk about the proposal, or what we have on the table, some staff concerns, and understand what you as planning commission members feel as well. And so at the close of this, our request is going to be that you can take this to the December meeting that Matthew has already slotted on the calendar for December 12th. So with that sort of out of the way, to kick off the discussion, what I want to do tonight is go through a little bit of history. Matthew has done that as well. I'll add a little bit of additional color because I do think that's important as far as the evolution of this property over the years. I want to talk a little bit about the existing entitlements on the site and what can be built on that property today. And I want to go through our current development proposal, which we have crafted, or we believe we've crafted thoughts on how this property should develop. And I think we feel we have a development proposal that does a really good job of fitting into the Litchfield Park sort of aesthetic, and also address. When I'm done, Danny's going to come up and talk a little bit to summarize some of their findings in the economic analysis of this community. They're probably familiar, but the 15 acres that we're talking about is right at the northeast corner of Wigwam Boulevard and Litchfield Road. The Cache project to our immediate west in the city's Litchfield Square project site is across Litchfield Road to the east. So from a zoning history standpoint, and I'm going to try not to spend a lot of time dwelling on this, but I want to go through it from our perspective, what happened in 2014 and the agreements and commitments that were made. The existing zoning on the site, which has been there since 2001, so it's been on the site for 21 years, allows the type of mixed-use development that the city is asking us to bring forward. And that has never been viable, at least from our perspective. We've never seen an opportunity to utilize that existing mixed-use zoning that's been in place for 21 years. I think the other thing you will see, at least that we see when we look at the evolution of the Wigwam resort properties, and this is the villages at Litchfield Park specifically, which is about 300 acres, is that there have been changes over time. There's been an evolution in the zoning and the development concepts and ideas over time, and we feel that our proposal is a natural extension of that evolutionary process. Market demands change over time, community needs change over time. And that's why you have the zoning statutory structure that you do. It allows us to come back and talk about why and ask for changes in zoning, because you need to be able to respond to changes in the community and the market. And to Matthew's point, it does no one any good to have this property to continue to sit vacant for another 21 years, and so we're trying to strike that balance. One of the things that Danny will talk about when he comes up, is our perspective on the economic impacts of this sort of hybrid project that we propose. It's not a vertical mixed-use project, but it is a mixed-use project, and will bring a variety of different indirect and direct revenue sources to the city. We believe that it's a net positive economic impact for the city of Litchfield Park. So just very quickly, on this map, our site, our 15 acres is highlighted in yellow. That is identified as parcel 17 in the historical village. It used to be Village of Litchfield Greens, I think, was the original zoning project name for this. In 2001, they changed it to the Villages at Litchfield Park. That is when this 15 acres was zoned with the neighborhood commercial zoning that it has on it today. And I'll go through that a little bit more detail as we move through the presentation. But that existing neighborhood commercial plan development zoning allows both commercial uses and multifamily uses without a density limit up to 3 stories in height on this site. The cachet I've heard a lot about already is in orange, just to the north. That is the consumed parcels 15 plus 19 through 22 of the original zoning case. Back in 2001, the Village of Litchfield Park zoning approval had the same neighborhood commercial zoning at 5-acre corner. And the balance of the parcel 90 or 195 multifamily residential units at heights up to 3 stories. I don't know the entire history behind this because it didn't materially change the zoning on what I used to have neighborhood commercial mixed use zoning. 5 units allowed across those parcels up to 4 stories in height, and that was 2000, so that was 2000. And sort of related properties, including the parcel we're talking about planning effort. I wasn't a color on certain aspects of that. It was really a general plan effort in 2004 to medium density residential to accommodate the change from commercial to mixed promised to the city of Litchfield. They were looking for a language was added to the general plan. Seeing 2001 Village Center zoning, as Matthew referenced, there were 7.5 acres so to the east of this site over on the Blue Court. Timeshare or condominiums could be developed on that site. That was a general plan amendment only. In order was the companion cachet rezoning case, so 28 to 20 was 28 acres, the zoning case itself, the corner, and the other existing high density residential zoning off of the cachet property. In the sense that I think you've got some attached product development in there, the cachet rezoning. And the height limit obviously came way down from the 4 stories that had been historically approved down to 30 feet. In 2018, JDM with a different development partner came for this 15 acres. That was 4 years after the original approval, and obviously they have not had any success in development. 18, there was a request to completely eliminate the 74. They just could not come to terms with city staff. In 2018, as I understand it, was a 3-story, fairly traditional multifamily sort of binding prior approval. So we see this all the time with large master plan developments. Is that this maybe everybody's not going to be happy, but develop a concept that works for this property, because at the end of the day, I would assume everyone would prefer to see it develop and not continue to be. So when we talk about the existing zone, very conflicted about how do we approach this property. So the existing zoning, it's village center for the existing plan development zoning approval. Zoning is not legally bound by the general plan today that requires 75,000 square feet of commercial, because that existing zoning has been in place for 21 years. A requirement if we develop under the existing zoning. So you could do, just to understand about that existing zoning is it does allow multifamily by right on segment of density limitation in the current zoning approval, and again, you really can't dictate ownership versus rents of that sort in the existing approval either. The general plan, as we talked about today. So we, I think. And I am going to ask, I did talk to Danny earlier, and I asked if they were around in 2014, or at least involved in the, where did the 75,000 square foot requirement come from? What was that based on? What does the site look like if you try to develop it? To kind of work on a plan for us to show what would be necessary to do minimum on the residential component of it. So I mean, to us, the market does not bear out that we can support 75,000 square. Very important to creating a diverse project, to having housing diversity. It should be a positive thing for the city, but what does that look like if you develop that? And this is probably a little hard to decipher, but he came up with a plan, and again, this is just conceptual. This would require a zoning change, but it's a concept that is contemplated in the general plan. And so this one includes about 78,000 square feet of retail with 2 stories of multifamily. Above that, it's a little over 200 multifamily units in this plan, which is what we're proposing today. In order to physically fit all that on the site and make accommodations for parking in particular, this ends up being 2-story retail buildings, 2 stories of residential above that. You have to have a parking garage of at least 4 stories to accommodate the multifamily units, and over 700 surface parking spaces to accommodate that level of retail. JDM has a lot of relationships with brokers in the valley. They've had some of the best working with them on this site over time. This is not a development concept that works. This is not something that is economically viable, at least at this point in time. And I don't think, from at least a neighborhood perspective, this is certainly not what the community would want to see next door to them, at least the immediate residents. And that's based on some of the comments and feedback that we've had, particularly at multi-story, multifamily, and things like that. So where does that leave us, right? Why am I going through all that history? I mean, I've mentioned it before. Is really to talk to you about that this is an evolutionary process. That is how development works, and you see this all over the valley. We don't feel like we're proposing or doing anything here that you don't see laid out in any other municipality in the valley. And our goal is to find a viable project that is a good fit for the city of Litchfield Park. So, I think one of the challenges we've had is that we do feel pressure of competing demands. I think we can say the changes, there have been significant changes in the market just in the last 8 years since the general plan act between what the city is asking us to do, which is maintain 75,000 square feet of retail, what is absolutely necessary to pay for the impact of cachet. But at the same time, based on the conversations we've had with some community members, and I would say, the majority of those that we've talked with look and feel and scale of Litchfield Park, and that they don't want, especially I think the folks that live in the cachet development or the Renaissance Villas project, to have sort of a tower and try to create a project that strikes a balance between what I see as 2 competing interests. And that's where that came from. So when I partnered with JDM and trying to find the design, the core design objectives are things in the field, something that looks like it fits in the city of Litchfield Park. High quality, high value retail users, so an amount of retail uses that residents would appreciate. I think another plans to continue to reinvest in that of Litchfield. And that it is just critical to housing diversity in this metro area. I don't know that this project in itself is really luxury, sort of resort style, upper end residential. It would be rental. Maintain 1 inch development on the Village Parkway. And that's a Kmart development plan. That's our entitlement request. And then retail component that we've got 14,100 square feet. There's a multifamily on 12 Point is actually a maximum of 196 units, not 212. That includes the general plan. We do need to modify the conceptual language that was added in 2014. We've simply now making the request to change the 75,000 square feet same. So that includes that we will develop the residential and the retail at the same time, that we will have cachet style residential development. So, on Boulevard and Litchfield Road, you have 2 sites adjacent to Renaissance Villas. So in the interior of the site, there's a clubhouse, community pool, internal to the community. We have proposed the reprise of 3 buildings that you can into 2 in the sort of third portion of Litchfield Road and along Village Parkway are 2-story townhomes. zoning, because I think that is one of the important metrics to look at here. You know, the existing zoning, at least 14,100 square feet of commercial. The existing zoning allows heights across the site. The existing zoning does not have a limit. There's no density cap on 8 multifamily apartment homes and 28 townhome units. And we are maintaining the commitment that multifamily community if the retail never materializes. Outlined in brown and yellow, in garages, patios, your active area focused on the corner. Residences, which again are 2 stories, which I make that work. Financial community, covered parking for all, sort of buffered from the surrounding community, residents of that community. The commercial, so that it is a kind of neighborhood destination. Go to a wine bar, branded gear would be resort to the new retail side of the resort. So there's a lot of opportunities there, but that would, and this is just a perspective rendering, looking, they would sort of be down on the left side of a few images. We've done a lot of work to move forward. These are the 2 interior buildings with the retail shop space. You can see the interior patios or what the retail architecture is planned to look like. Again, some additional retail along Village Parkway. This would be the town, the outdoor patios, again, courtyards, balconies. This is an image of the multifamily apartment homes. And again, they've taken a lot of effort to really try to blend into the existing aesthetic of the neighborhood. A resort style, amenities in the apartment home residence, and just another shot of the residents and neighbors to the north and the west. Portion of the project, because this is one of the discussion points for rental units. It's not, maybe they're ready to downsize, they're looking for, experience. That's who we think, and ask Danny to come up and talk to you.
An economist, and I know the partners at, so happy. We were retained to do current as of 2022, so a very current retail market analysis of what the retail landscape looks like. Others have referred to it as an effective cure to insomnia, but it's available to you and so with this proposed project of the multifamily units and for local city sales tax, local tax for that rate as proposed, and city staff did reference our number, and I can go through that. Like there was a comment from city staff that they felt like our estimate needed too aggressive. It's mostly a residential project, so we're talking about state income tax from the Highway Use Revenue Fund, and from here, by one vote, it did not go through. That's vehemently opposed to by all municipalities in our states. They really want that. They really want the tax revenue number is in our calculation, and we can pull it out. In our calculation is about $175,000. The retail market analysis, I'll just kind of go over some of the key findings. It's had a tough go over the last decade plus. Internet received a spike during the pandemic. Everyone went on retail going to online. The good news is, press checkout. Local suburban community that may not have a ton of commercial assets is that our retail gap analysis, we forecasted the trade of 14 and then an update in 2018. We mimicked that trade area just so that you could have some apples to apples. We're doing a short term, we're doing a long term forecast of how much population is serving retail. And I think in ours, years in this trade area. Now, that's the key component is the trade areas. And then it goes attention given to competition. There are over 40 acres of vacant commercial land competing for the same retail tenants before. And it's been marketed, for the last 8 years with no success so far. You've seen what happens what's happening on the 303 right now. Here in Waddell, there's just a giant sucking sound of so it's a lot, and that's going to be that's going to supply this demand that's coming to this area. Population sort of leapfrogging this area and going to where there is active development, retail all over the coast. So because there's an oversupply of retail land, the lost opposite coastal, you're actually balancing out the land uses. There's an oversupply of retail land. How do you correct for an oversupply? You add residential units. The residential units are a better way to market Litchfield Square across the street to show that there's 200 more feet of Litchfield Square. Another point, and it's well taken by city staff, that you do have city costs, the residents like Litchfield Park, and you have commercial assets. When you introduce new residential, commercial sites collect the sales tax, but the residents are the ones generating the sales tax. They take their, and what may look like mostly residential, they're bringing and enhancing your commercial assets, the existing assets. So your sales tax dollars will go up. They will see an increase in sales when you have residential. You don't necessarily need to add to the inventory of commercial. They will see that increase in sales, and that's in our economic fiscal impact report. I would dispute the costs that were outlined. I thought that was very, even if a multifamily community is at full occupancy, there's about 5% of units that are given. That's just called frictional vacancy. Community at any given time that has all of their units completely occupied, even if they say they're fully occupied. So you probably won't see our point, and I hope this is getting through more and more. We're seeing more municipalities adopt this point of view, that include the tax revenue generation that they are providing. We tend to, but there's no without the residents. The residents are what drives the retail. And so you have to combine those together. It's all residents. Residents are a net benefit post of local city taxes that come because residents come. And that's what we have here. When city staff outlined roughly $300,000 in new city costs for these new residents, our estimate is $585,000 annually in local city taxes. So that's a net surplus over the city costs. In addition to that, there will be to cover some of those costs. So a huge influx of cash related to construction, and then a net surplus. So you're in the surplus once these residents are here, shopping locally, and generating those new tax revenues. If you pull up the $175,000 of lease tax, say that does go away, we're still at a net tax revenue, a net positive tax revenue of $117,000. So even without the lease tax, this residential project brings in more tax revenue than city costs. I think that's, unless you have any questions, I will say back in 2014, 75, in my opinion, negotiated amount to try to drive the project forward. It was basically a concession by the landowner to reserve that land for a potential for 75,000 square feet. We saw over the next 8 years no interest, especially that footprint. And now a reduction at 14,000 square feet, a much more manageable footprint for retail. You've got the wigwam, showing you their vision. That kind of retail presence makes sense. At 75,000 square feet, it's not a major anchor tenant, a minor anchor tenant, a smaller format closure, and we're just not seeing that kind of demand in this area. And there's just so much competition. There's so much competition out there in this trade area. There's just better sites, more competitive sites, and the way to drive that retail demand, if you want to enhance it in the city, is to bring more residents in, and that's what this project does. So.
We have any questions? Any questions from the commission? see. Go ahead.
How did you arrive at the 14,000 square foot amount? Okay.
No, I mean, what I will say is, as I mentioned, JDM intends to develop and manage the retail in concert with the resort, and so it would have resort-related food and beverage services and some other ancillary retail. I know that in discussions that we've had with our brokers, their reaction could invest and and fill those spaces with community scale retail users, again, that are probably more resort related, so they're not necessarily going to be out marketing this to the local Dutch Bros or some of those franchise retail tenants. I mean, this truly is intended to be I would call it a boutique retail development. So it's less based on what the market is saying should be there, which the market is telling us less. I think we all feel that anything under 10,000 square feet is never going to get us out of the starting gate. And so in working with the viability of the residential component of it and the desire to have at least, now we're at 196 residential units, in order to make that economically viable, particularly with the downscale size, 2 stories, that's a lot less units than have been proposed before. That takes a certain footprint. And so, we worked to some extent with what was left to pair those two components of the project.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, is it Danny?
Yeah.
Danny, I have a question for you. I'm a real estate guy, so I enjoyed your report. Why would you, and I'm not trying to compare Litchfield Park to Gilbert, however, we are, I don't know any vacancies within Litchfield Park on the retail or mall, but we are surrounded by some bigger cities as well. So I'm just curious, what your thoughts are on that, because I feel like that it was such a large area scope that you went towards, and I feel like we kind of missed a more detailed granular of a mile radius. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, probably 3 answers. One, just if you could clarify Chandler and Gilbert.
Projects like that are, that have boutique retailers going in, and it's, they're getting tenants in those developments.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to, just broadly, it's not even unique to Litchfield Park. Just generally, Greater Phoenix does not seem a lot of retail development. So, but I understand on a project by project basis, that's what I would consider a smaller scale, but certainly having success. And you're seeing there that there is a strong residential component to that, plus very strong demographics going on there. So, if I were the city's consultant, I would say your epicenter is Litchfield Square, and so it's a large project. You're talking about over 300,000 square feet of development potential. That's what my focus would be, and have this be a complementary piece of residential to provide to entice those types of retailers in, because there's a strong residential component there. And I would growth, and similar with Surprise and 303 Martell, again, having a really great asset of a large transportation corridor, lots of vehicle traffic, and then the residential projects around it. So these are areas on the edge of it. It pales in comparison to what kind of the retail development we saw pre-2010. So it just just our retail landscape just really hasn't recovered, and it is these. I don't think I fully answered your question, but was there any other?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I'll accept your answer, if that's your answer.
Yeah. So again, and the consultant in 2018, which was using their consultant, and that was his trade area. I will note that there was no excess retail land in his study when we went out 5 miles. You had to go to 10 to 15 miles to find the excess retail demand to justify the Litchfield Square and demand for Litchfield Park. So the positioning of a 75,000 square foot neighborhood center would denote something within a customer, and probably much less than 5 miles, but a customer coming from 5 miles or less to come visit that store, no excess demand within 5 miles. The neighborhood center is a harder concept than at Litchfield Square, where it's a regional concept. You're trying to draw, you're trying to create a boutique or a high-end type of center to do a regional draw, which is a concept similar to Scottsdale Border. You have to have that. You have to have that local demand, and it's just not there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm trying to understand the parking a little bit. It seems like the parking ratio is a little less than what might be needed. And when you mentioned that some of this be gated off, would some of that parking be restricted just to a certain percentage of the homes, a certain type of homes, like a townhomes, for instance, or whatever? Does that create a parking term for the retail and others? I mean, if you have a mixed-use project, then typically, I know that's changing, more people working from home, but people leave the house during the day, that creates parking for retailers that are there during the day and their customers, and then, you know, but I'm a little concerned about there, they charge for a parking space, as well as other things, it's kind of a smorgasbord charges, and parking is one of them, so, and if it is, if there's a charge for parking, then you start seeing parking, but can you clarify that, please?
Sure. So I'll start with the pay for parking concept. That is not something that is contemplated here. You know, parking for the residents. So the way that this is structured, you know, because you have a gated multifamily development, the separate ownership will be from the commercial component that will be retained by JDM, the Wigwam Management Group. The parking for the multifamily is designed to accommodate the multifamily development. You know, if there's no shared parking between those two uses. Each of those townhomes, as I mentioned, has a 2-car garage, so that's, you know, that's as with the traditional sort of single-family home scenario. You know, there is parking dedicated for each of the units throughout the project, as well as guest parking. IDM has multifamily projects across the country and has a lot of experience as to parking needs of their residents. You know, and I will say, we face this question and inquiry in almost every, a lot of communities that we work for multifamily developers in across the valley. The city, out-of-the-box city parking code ratios and family parking requirements of any city in the valley. And you know, our operational assessment is that that is going to create an excess of parking, which is why you've seen a slight reduction in the parking as far as the parking waiver for this project, residents and guests. So that's very important. The long-term viability of a project like this to keep the residents happy when you're trying to retain a certain level of quality. I mean, again, you have to make sure you're making accommodations for all those things. And then on the retail side, you know, we expect this to be some hybrid of destination, what I would call, you know, more destination retail, where people are going here to Weston or whatever it is, with the ability for residents and resort guests through some relationship with the resort to get here on some other mode of transportation other than driving their car. And so in working with our retail architect, parking for this retail center has again been designed with the retail concept in mind. And that it will self-park, is the concept. There is some on-street parking existing on Village Parkway to the north of us, but we don't factor that into our parking calculations or considerations. So I hope that answers your question.
Any other questions?
So Danny, not picking on you, just got another one. You're the professional here. So am I hearing it correctly that your professional opinion is that retail will work in Litchfield Square? However, your stance is you don't feel like retail would work on this corner?
No. What I'm saying is, you have a project, a stated city project for Litchfield Square. I'm saying to create the most feasible and successful scenario for Litchfield Square would be to have these vessels. We did not do, if you look at that report, again, if Litchfield Square were to build out 270,000 square feet of retail, our projection is basically that covers over 30% of expected retail demand in that giant trade area over the next 33 years. So it's in our opinion, that's still a very, it's an aggressive goal. It would be a lofty goal to get to have Litchfield Square capture 30% of this large trade area's new retail demand over the next 30 years. So it would be a huge accomplishment to capture that high amount to make it the most feasible as possible. We don't want 75,000 square feet competing against it to, basically capitalize on itself. So this would be supporting the Litchfield Square project.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the public comments. The first speaker here is Kathy Byrne.
Good evening, Commission members and city officials. My name is Kathy Broom, and I'm the president of Renaissance Villas Board of Directors under HOA. I'm here this evening representing a community of residents that are not in favor of rental units, mainly because of the probable decline in our property values being adjacent to rental units. And I wonder about the property values for our neighbors at Cache and across the street in Goodyear. IBM's explanation of the first meeting that we had was as deceiving in that these are luxury apartments and they're going to be rented for $2,500 to $3,500 a month, therefore expecting upscale rental agreements. And I guess my question is, what happens when that $2,500 or $3,500 rental does not materialize and rents have to be lowered to accommodate the needed occupancy plus the needed financial income for IBM's own loan commitments? Another question, is there a limit on the number of people that can have a rental agreement? Because another scenario is that you got 4 25, 35-year-olds and then adding another 3 or 4 vehicles to the area. And I've heard explanations about the number of parking places being available, and I know we deal with Renaissanceville with our own parking issues. And that I'm wondering what the impact of the increased traffic is. Trying to cross Wigwam Boulevard, school levels in the morning, you can stand there for quite a while, crossing the road isn't there. And I'm wondering, as has been mentioned also, the tax dollars that are invested this evening, which have helped to explain a lot about that and how that works, and I appreciate that. But finally, in in my experience in Renaissance schools, renters who do not have an ownership interest in their community where they're dwelling, most often are not concerned about taking as good care of the property as the owners. And I just want you to think about it. I know the property itself is very attractive. I like the way it looks. I'm just concerned about how we're going to learn together as renters. But thank you for listening to my comments and our concerns, and thank you for the opportunity to share them.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul Ty.
Good evening, my name is Paul Ty, city resident and also president of the Cache and Wigwam HOA Association. So I come here, first of all, to applaud the work of the city staff. The presentation had some good data and I think some very valid points. I encourage you to support their recommendations. I also hope you listen to the citizens, both from the neighborhoods meeting back in August, the end of August, where every comment I heard was against, or question and comment was against the proposal. And if you look at what your decision will have as a long-term impact, right now you're working to create a nice city center that'll really define the city of Litchfield Park for generations. 20 years from now, you'll have a vibrant city center, and across the street, you potentially have 20-year-old apartments that are not luxury anymore. We're there, we're transient, they'll have a vesting in the community, as the previous speaker noted to the other concerns. So I hope you'll take that into consideration, listen to the emails and other things that the city staff have already received, because the people who are here care about it. The developer, I heard comments that there are conflicting objectives, and I agree with that. The developer's objective, rightfully so, is to make money and then leave. The citizens here are sure of that. We want it to stay that way. And so having a transient population come in doesn't support that. If you put a Trader Joe's there, I bet it would be the busiest one in the state. So I think there are other things that could be done within the current zoning, so I certainly encourage you to not support or approve the requested changes. Thank you.
We don't have any other requests to speak. Did anybody else fill out a request to speak that I do not have in front of me? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We'll move on to business item B, public hearing, proposed rezoning amendment, RZ 22-02, 15 acres located in the northwest corner of West Wigwam Boulevard and North Litchfield Road. We are starting, we'll open up the public hearing. We're starting with the staff report. Do we have any additional data?
Mr. Chairman, no, sir, I do not.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any additional data?
Thank you. I would like to make just a couple comments in response to the comments we just heard from the community. I do hear that over and over again. The developer's objective is to make money and exhale it out of town. I think that is one of the probably what I would put in the plus column for what you have in front of you today. IDM is a multifamily developer, is a long-term owner-operator, and has actually never sold one of their projects. It is to their long-term benefit to ensure their project is maintained at the level and quality that it was on day one, because it's an investment and an asset that they keep for the long term. And on the retail side, you have JDM, and the owner of the Wigwam, that is investing in and will own and manage the retail. And they're obviously long-term invested in the city of Litchfield Park. So I think we've actually got a great pairing of partners here for a project like this that, in other instances, you may not have that level of long-term commitment to the community. I do think I wanted to address Ms. Broom's comment just about the number of residents that you can have, or people in rental units. Again, this goes back to operations and management of the IDM's community. There are occupancy limits on those units. They have companies that residents make in their rental contracts. They do annual inspections of their units. They don't, this is I think, a little bit of an unfounded fear in a community that's this quality. But that is, again, a management and operational issue that they have protocol in place to deal with. That's it.
Thank you. I don't have any requests to speak from the public. Is there any requests to speak from the public? Good. If you fill out a request, we'll go ahead. Go ahead, Michael Toscano.
Hi there. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's input today. I truly believe the planning and zoning group has done a phenomenal job. I do believe that also IDM and JDM have done their due diligence. JDM has been an ideal partner for Litchfield Park for many, many years. The Wigwam is a hub for this community. Right now, when you look at, and Danny, when I look at the numbers, and I appreciate that too, being from an engineering standpoint, Litchfield Park is growing. I mean, we're a small community, but it's a growing community if you look at the numbers of what has happened. This is a desired place. Right now, there is a waiting list of over 70 people that want to become members of the Wigwam Country Club, but can't because we're at a max point. So we are a growing situation. This is a secret of where people are now realizing this is a nice place to be, a nice place to live. And I think you're going to conceive, you'll have growth, you'll have people coming in, you'll have the residents being. I don't think there's not a person that, or the majority of people will tell you that what happened at Cache was a win. It was an ideal situation, it was a great effort. The people that live there, I know quite a few of them, they speak very highly of it. It's an outstanding piece of property that has been converted, and I think it's a benefit to Litchfield Park. That's not to say that you can't do the same for this piece of property, and I understand you're looking at different options. I hear from the Planning and Zoning Board that they're amenable to come to the table with something less than $75,000 if you present something that would meet both their needs and desires as well as what would be acceptable. So this is, look, we're trying to get to a win-win scenario, which I think there is several opportunities to come up with something that can meet both sides and be a solution that will enhance Litchfield Park and the way that we've done things. I think you have excellent people working this, and I look forward to that lot changing into something that most people are going to say, thumbs up.
Thank you. If no other requests to speak, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Move on to item C, the proposed major general plan amendment application GPA 22-02, 15 acres located on the northwest corner of West Wigwam Boulevard and North Litchfield Road. This is a discussion of possible recommendation to the city of Litchfield Park general plan. Does any commissioner have any discussion or is it willing to make a motion?
I have some questions.
I think that JDM's been an amazing partner for the city, and I'm hearing from you guys tonight that you're asking for feedback and want a more of a working session. So I have some questions that I'm hoping to drive that. I think that history and precedence is always an important context to any situation. However, I also am sitting here on November 10th, and I also want to look at what the current landscape is and what specifically would be best and what would make sense for not only this parcel, but also Litchfield Square. I think that to me, it's not a non-starter to have multifamily. However, again, I think what's been proposed is, to me, not very interesting. So I don't necessarily find that the plan proposed is an interesting concept for that court. I think that in reading through, I felt like it was on multiple occasions referred to as a mixed-use plan that you were putting forth, and I don't really find what was presented as really a mixed-use project. So with that, I just wanted to state that, but now I'm going to have some questions. And I guess my first question is, IBM looks like a value developer. And my question is they're referred to as a developer of high quality live, work, and business spaces. So is someone at IBM here? So I guess my question, you want to be able to speak and not sit here all night, right? So my question is what did you guys look, with that expertise, did you look at a plan or a project that would include, live, work blocks, live, work townhome, like something that integrated some retail and commercial into the project?
Good evening, I'm Tony Allred, IBM Companies. So to answer that question, in IBM's expertise, live, work, and business spaces. So our kind of real estate track record over 30 years in the Pacific Northwest and also here in the Valley has included development of multifamily, industrial, and other kind of office uses. And combining that into a mixed-use project here, we did not look at doing kind of business working units. And the primary reason for that is great conflicts. Great conflicts with parking, great conflicts with traffic, and just keeping a pure multifamily development in this location made the most economic sense to us, so the most kind of use-specific sense to us. And so for that reason, we proposed only kind of multifamily use with the supporting downloads around the perimeter.
Thank you.
Anything else I answer?
No, not at this moment. Thank you. So I do like the idea of additional residents supporting Litchfield Square. I think that's important for all of us to help support and see that grow. I'm curious if the developer or JDM had any discussions with either Cache or another home builder. Again, from our perspective, and I think yours too, that it was very successful. So I think what's hard for me is seeing these reports, but yet we still see such success with the Fry's development and the Cache. So they seem contrary that there would be so much success in that, and that the reports show something different. So I guess I'm curious if JDM went down that avenue as well.
So I mean, with respect to looking at, ownership, single family or the Cache style development, this site is a lot different than the Cache site in that it's about half the size. And, you know, with the existing zoning and the expectations that there was going to be some sort of commercial center on this site, I don't know that that was ever seriously evaluated. Whether that, you know, I think if you went down that path, it would have to be, I mean, I think you're trending back towards some higher density product type for that to make sense. Because you don't have nearly the amount of land area that you did for cachet to develop, you know, community minis, you have, you know, residential streets take a lot more land area, just a lot of those things. You know, I don't know all of the history, you know, with JDM's thoughts and conversations from 2014 until today. I mean, this is the second pass that they've had with this, where they have come forward with a multifamily proposal, and that's what, you know, we seem to keep coming back to as a economically viable solution that provides housing diversity for the city of Litchfield Park. So, you know, that's feedback that we'll have to take back. I think some of you know, continue to talk about, but from what I know, that's not been seriously evaluated at all.
Thank you.
Susan,
Oh, yeah.
Just regarding the price, in 2014, price was sort of already in tow. So I don't know if before that there was a report that said the price would not be feasible, but in 2014, that was actually an 80 acres parcel that the city's consultant said to maintain it as 80 acres, and the concept was like a design center type of mixed commercial design center, like furniture stores, design, interior design, things like that, to keep it as 80 acres. Fry's was there saying, we like the site as long as the other 40 acres goes to residential. And so I think for that particular case, you know, Fry was there in 2014 saying, we like the site, we love it if the 40 acres to the north of us was the single-family homes to support that development. So at least at that time period, there was no market report saying Fry's was not feasible at that site. So, but I can't speak to years when it was prior to that. So just a clarification.
Thank you. So do any of the commissioners have any discussion or possible recommendation to the city council?
I would make a motion that we continue this. Again, I think that they're a big partner for us, and that's what I'm hearing in the request. So I would make a motion that we continue it.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Excuse me, Chair, we actually, Commissioner Frazier is raising.
Understood.
Commissioner Frazier, can you hear us? Commissioner Frazier?
Aye.
Thank you. Are there any opposed? Didn't think so.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that'll be continued until. That'll be continued till December 2nd, is that correct? Or it's December 12th? Yes, thank you. On to the next item of business, proposed rezoning amendment application, RZ 2202, same property. This is time for discussion and possible recommendation. Do we have a discussion or possible recommendation?
I'll make a motion that we move it forward with the recommended zoning reclassification as published.
For clarification, your motion is to recommend approval to the city council?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion for recommendation to the city council. Do I have a second? Seeing none, that motion will fail. we have any other motions? I'll go ahead and motion to continue this to December 12th with any major general plan amendment.
Second.
We have a second. All those, are there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Commissioner Frazier, can you hear us? If you are speaking, you are on mute. Commissioner Frazier?
Aye.
Thank you.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, we'll continue that as well to December 12th. Sorry, yes, December 12th. On to the next item, introduction of zoning code section 36.02, permitted locations of WCF's text amendment. Presenter, Daniel Walters.
Excuse me, Chair, can you just
Take your time.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Audience, pulling up the bus. Thank everyone that attended. I know a lot of you are here for this item. Thank you for coming out for your interest. Thank you, IDM, JD, for being here with us tonight. We'll see you on December 12th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Have a great night, guys. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're still working on this, right? 1 second. Somehow I don't think the next item is as popular as just a hunch. Commission members, while Dan's trying to open this document, I can talk about it in short. Wait on it.
Please go ahead, sir.
The item is in your packet. This one's pretty short, basically. Most cities allow cell phone towers to be built in industrial zoning. This report does not. Our only industrial zone in the city, of course, is Monument Point. That's where the large storage facility is being built today, which you've seen. We do have a party that's interested in building a cell phone tower in industrial zoning, but currently it's not allowed. We have looked at our surrounding cities, and almost everyone allows cell phone towers in industrial zoning. I would tell you, if you're going to build one anywhere, that's where I would put it, as an industrial zoning, because that way it doesn't have a negative impact on homes. Also, if you're familiar with that area, there are no homes around Monument Point that are Litchfield Park homes. Across the street, you have a gravel pit, you have a desert road, there's no homes negatively impacted. That's what this change would be for a first reading, would be to change that code to allow cell phone towers in industrial zone. That's my quick summary. Dan can certainly add more to it than that if you'd like.
I see the chair, to the chair. On the board there, all staff is looking to do is add general industrial at the end of section A of 36.02. And I will take any questions.
Since we're putting the city center together, I think I could be here. With the city center, are we going to allow cell towers hidden in that complex? Because it's a combination, and what they're gathering and gaining, and if you want a good cell tower representative.
Commissioner, are you asking me, sir, if we would allow cell phone towers in Litchfield Square? I would say absolutely no. Simply because the property value is worth entirely too much money when you put cell phone towers there. just in my opinion. And there is a somewhat nearby cell phone tower now. There is a cell phone tower now that's on the Hilltop property, up by the Walmart across from Fry's. That's actually on the city property. That would be the closest one. But again, I can't see putting one in Litchfield Square. One, because there's so many restrictions on Litchfield Square. For example, in the CCRs, there's 62 business types that are not allowed in Litchfield Square. It's very restrictive for obvious reasons. And again, just the property value. We're talking about property value in Litchfield Square leasing for $33, $35 a square foot. So I can't see putting a cell phone tower there, personally. Hope that answers your question, sir.
But now the flip question, who was sitting right next to it? You got the phone company right there. And the question is, in the future, I can't imagine that they're not gonna want to, and I'm only opening up the question to see, as long as we do some front planning instead of, at the end, knee-jerk reaction, because, what do they got sitting there? That switch that they got is not gonna move. It's tied into too many things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir. And they can, of course, redevelop that lot, see what they want to do with it. I don't see them putting a cell phone tower there. I think they can certainly redevelop the building if they chose to. But I can't imagine they would ever put a cell phone tower there.
Okay.
Just from what I see, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
So I'm not super familiar with this, but could you have a cell phone tower, but it's like hidden within no, not even a phone, but like a clock. I think that I can understand not wanting a cell phone tower or fake looking tree, but are you saying that someone could put a cell tower that's hidden in a building? I don't know if it's feasible. I just thought I'd ask.
I'll be honest, you're way outside my wheelhouse here on that. I can talk about this one and how tall it can be, but as far as having one hidden in Litchfield Square on a building or on a clock, I have no idea. I can certainly look into that, but that's outside my wheelhouse. Dan, do you have any comments on that?
I've got to look into it as well.
Thank you for an interesting question.
To be clear, we're just talking about in the industrial zone, which is Monument Point.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Are there any setbacks for a cell phone tower or anything like that, or restrictions on how close it can be to anything?
Commissioner, there are some of those restrictions in the proposed property that the person's looking at currently, or the applicant's looking at, meets all of the criteria for a cell phone tower. It'll be well protected by two buildings. It won't be very visible to many people at all.
Any other questions?
Now, allowing those cell phone towers, who owns the land?
In this case, for this tower, it's a private.
It's not us. We don't own it. So we don't get the revenue.
Unfortunately.
Okay. The reason I ask is because my cousin that owns a farm up in Wisconsin, he has a really tall elevator. He now has 5 different entities up there with cell tower repeater stations.
Just curious if there would be any sort of design process review on that.
Yes, there would. Currently, the design, the applicant is looking to do a broadleaf tree. Our code, broadleaf trees don't really fit into this general area. We would be looking at more of a pond style tree here to discuss it.
Thank you. Any other questions? This item shows information action. Is there an action on this, or is this a form of motion?
There is no action.
No action, okay. On to business item F, approval of minutes.
Chair. So we have the October, sorry, I don't have it in front of me my computer.
I make a motion to approve the October minutes as published and reviewed.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Commissioner Frazier jumped off.
Okay. Any others against? Seeing none, it's approved. Commissioners report on current events. Do commissioners have a report on any current events?
Happy Thanksgiving and current event. Happy Thanksgiving.
Seeing none, we go on to staff report on current events. Does staff have a report on current events?
At this time, staff has no report.
The executive session is the next item on this list. But I'm assuming we're not going into executive session.
Correct.
And next item is adjournments. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion by Brian O'Connor and a second by Bob Darian. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none. This meeting is adjourned.
No figure of them, so that's good.